All right, Awesemo, here we are. We're getting ready for a little showdown action here. We've got Sunday night football. We have who is it tonight? Kansas City Chiefs in Las Vegas taking on the Raiders. I was almost going to say Tampa Bay and the Pewter Pirates because I'm writing up tomorrow night's article was what I was doing before we went on air here. So now I've got to shift gears back to where I've got my lineup set up. At a nice little sweat coming out here, Kyle, for the tiers contest. Now there's nothing but tiers. Instead of getting first for 1,000, I'm right now fifth for $150. These contests are top heavy. How are you doing? How was your Sunday? Did you get destroyed today? Did you survive? What was going on?
I didn't get destroyed because I nailed quarterback. I didn't really do much else right, but I feel like maybe I could go back and look, but I think there was a pretty big disparity. Like the Taysom Hill didn't lead the slate in scoring, but his points per dollar was absolutely monstrous. And Deshaun Watson probably led the slate in scoring by a pretty wide margin. Maybe Justin Herbert ended up getting up there. I know Kirk Cousins had a good game. I was over the field on most, if not all of those guys, well over the field on like your Watsons. The only things I missed on were like, didn't play a lot of Dalvin Cook. And man, he is good at football. And if only there was some way to know that. But alas, we could not have known.
Yeah, we've got coming down to the wire here. Those of you in Survivor.
If he froze, it sounds like he froze. Survivor pools. I think he was talking Survivor pools.
As far as and wait,
we get you back.
Survivor squad there. Yes. Oh, hopefully.
You briefly froze, EMac, but we have you back now. We lost you at Survivor pools. I think you were talking about potentially, I guess both.
The Packers.
You could have even.
The Packers are my team.
Yeah. Was there a way to get, like, I didn't play Survivor pools. I know there's generally like the same path that people tend to follow, like snaking the same, like try and getting as many matchups against like the Jets or whatever. Like, did the Vikings fall into that category of like you were targeting the Vikings this week, or was that not the strategy?
They would have been, they were my second choice, but I figured this was the only week I really had left to go with. I went with the Chargers. I'm sorry, I went with the Chargers. I was debating those three teams. I just had to look it up now. I start out with three teams. It's win or go home in this particular Survivor pool. We've evolved over the years. Used to be you could only pick a team 3 times or against a team 3 times. There is no buyback, and now we've just changed it. You can just pick against each team once. There usually is it's $10 an entry, and there's usually about $2,500 in the pot. So we're down to 38 teams left. So there we go. Yes, it's like magically the 2-year 1 month mark on my computer here, and I'm getting all the warnings of everything that it no longer is under warranty. It's no longer under this or that. And it's like, wait, how look, last weekend was a disaster. I was a disaster. Now we're freezing again. We got Jordan kindly producing. I may have to just spring for another gaming computer here because it just seems like it's not going to hold anything. I'm actually plugged into the router too, which is the only way we go. But we've got enough of our people here. Let's get on in. Please do hit that like button. That is very helpful to us, gets us past that pesky YouTube algorithm. And if you like us a lot, you could actually just subscribe. Lofty is leading the charge here. We're on our way to 50,000 subscribers by Christmas. We think we can do it. We know you guys are there with us. We've got NBA right around the corner, and we'd love to continue bringing you guys all of the great content in front of the paywall here. Let's see. Anything exciting tonight? Let me open up my notes. There were no, if I recall correctly, there were no surprise outs. We knew that Sammy Watkins was going to be out, and we probably thought Jalen Richard was going to be out, and he is. Those are really the only notable inactives. Anything else that jumped out there for you?
You know, Jalen Richard, as far as I remember, we had him projected out all morning, so it wasn't any surprise there, even if you had been making lineups as early as the morning, using our stuff at least. And Watkins was ruled out a day or two ago at least, the third or fourth string tight end for the Chiefs. I think he was with the Browns at one point. I always think of him as
Ricky Seals-Jones.
Ricky Seals-Jones. I always think of him as Austin Seferian-Jenkins because they're like athletic, high upside tight ends.
University of Washington Huskies, Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
Yeah, so I always get those guys confused, and they both matter as much on this slate, equally as much. So yeah, not a lot of surprise. Maybe we'll see like Devontae Booker continue to serve as like the clear backup. Jalen Richard was really just going to get up 2 or 3 targets anyways, and we kind of knew he was going to be out. So no surprises. Nothing out of the normal here.
All right, so I've got the rest of my notes up. Clyde Edwards-Helaire missed practice Thursday with an illness, not COVID. Full practice Friday. He's good to go. Speaking of COVID, Mecole Hardman was activated off of the COVID reserve. And then at one point, there were 11 different Raiders that were on the COVID reserve this week. That happened early in the week. It was a close contact situation with Clelin Ferrell, who is one of their defensive ends. He had the positive test because he was in meetings and such with the rest of the defense. At one point, they had 11 players on, and I think 7 of them were on defense. Though, as far as I know, they're all active now. Most of them were activated yesterday. They had to go, I forget if it's 4 or 5 clean days of negative tests. They met that. They could not practice or be in-person meetings prior to that, but they could do video meetings and that sort of thing. So just want to point that out. At this point in the season, yes, while we'd like to see them all playing and such, come on, it's week 11. Everybody's banged up. This is one of those 6 of one, half a dozen of the others. They're rested. They just didn't go through their normal week. So what happens? But this is the only team to beat Kansas City. So there we go. Let's lead off with Kansas City here. Last I took the snapshot, it was a 33.25 implied total here for the Chiefs. As I mentioned, they have lost once this season. That was also the only game in which Pat Mahomes had an interception. 25 touchdowns to 1 interception, a pretty good ratio. Raiders are in the bottom third of the league with their DVOA. Let's see. What else did I want to point out? Third best yards per game, 298.6 for Mahomes. He has gone over 340 passing yards multiple times. Sing his praises. He's our number one guy. We're paying for it, but I think it's appropriate. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, that 25 to 1 is absolutely murderous. Like, how do you possibly beat this guy? And of course, the Raiders, being the one team to have beaten him. But really, it does seem like it just requires such a monumental effort and such just bad luck from the Chiefs for them to lose, because those are college numbers, man. That's not, it doesn't seem like a real player. So yeah, I think the thing really comes down to, in low stakes stuff, I'm pretty much fine playing Mahomes. He's expensive, but there are ways to find value on this slate. And he's incredible. You can just lock him in, and you can lock him in for, like you said, hundreds of yards, multiple touchdowns. And recently, they really haven't been running a ton, which kind of is interesting, given that the Chiefs win most of their games, and they still and I mean, obviously it makes sense. It just seems like for some team to do something so rational as to throw every single time with Mahomes, we never see that. We never see teams act just like we want them to in Madden or whatever. So to see Mahomes, to them kind of not entirely give up on running the ball, but just splitting 15 carries amongst their running backs and letting Mahomes go wild is awesome. That's why we can really consider playing him at captain. It's hard to even get away from him at flex. My only point of caution would be in the largest field tournaments, our ownership as of this morning, and I'll pull it up again, is just astronomical on him. And it deserves to be. We saw the same thing with Dalvin Cook on, I believe it was the most recent Monday night game, where even the best plays can fail. And when they fail at 25, 30% ownership, even if they don't downright fail, they just fail to be the optimal captain in this sense. That's a really good leverage. Even if it sounds, terrifying, and you probably lose this bet more often than you win it, it's about how much it pays out when you do win it. Probably pay out a lot if it doesn't end up working out from home draft. Right now we have nearly 30% captain ownership. That is, coming up on a third of the field, somewhere between a quarter and a third of the field. I'd probably prefer to play him in the flex in the largest tournaments and just hope that his greatness, elevates a Kelsey or a Hill to the optimal captain spot. And I think that's really the biggest decision point for me, or at least the starting decision point. Because you look at the top and you think, oh, these guys are great. And in fact, both Kelsey and Mahomes right now, based on our top showdown and single games plays tool, have a better chance of being the top overall scoring player than they're going to be owned at. It's simply, what is that downside risk? So I'd look to a Kelsey, to a Hill potentially, and keep Mahomes in the flex in my large field tournaments. And anything that is really small, your 100-mans and stuff, maybe you look to get different somewhere else. And I'm not advocating to completely leave Mahomes out of your lineup. That seems like lunacy.
All right, reminder, I do want to get this out there. We're going to say it a couple times because it is a fantastic deal. It is the promo code Mayflower in honor of Thanksgiving. We are giving away the 1-week Awesemo Express package, just $1. That's it for the full week. Grab that tonight. Grab it right now, and you're going to get showdowns for Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night. And hey, wait for it. It'll still be active for part of the content as you get in there on Sunday. Make that dollar stretch. Promo code Mayflower gets you the Awesemo Express package, NFL 1 week for $1. This is for new users only. All right, let's look at the running backs here. So that was, you sort of called it out. It's been very difficult to see what's really been going on here with the running backs. So since in the 3 games where they have Le'Veon Bell, Clyde Edwards-Helaire rushed 19 times for 81 yards. He has a touchdown, and then he also has 12 targets, 7 catches, 47 yards, and another touchdown. That works out to what, like 35, let's see, 47 yards per game. My math's a little bit off. In those same games, though, it's not been Bell getting the numbers. In those games, he has 16 carries for 54 yards and 4 catches for 26. Even if you combine all those yards together, there's still not 100 yards per game. Is it going to somebody else in their backfield? No, because during this 3-game stretch, Darrell Williams, DeAndre Washington, and Darwin Thompson have a combined 4 targets. Williams caught his 2. Washington got his only one for 2 yards. And then those guys have also combined for 10 carries and just 25 more yards. So there's not much to like or look at in the backfield here. It's a little bit scary. I don't think this is a hot take. I would take Devin Booker, who is sort of the backup to Josh Jacobs on the Raiders side, over any of the backs for the significant discount that you're getting, especially on DraftKings with the Chiefs. The other thing working against the Chiefs running backs, there's all sorts of wide receivers and tight end options. So it makes it very tricky to trust any of those guys. However, could we see them race to a lead? Yes. Again, this is the only team that they've lost to, but could we see them race to a lead and then just, pound Helaire and Le'Veon Bell? Sure. Just doesn't seem like that they're going to get there. Or if they do, which one is it going to be? And that doesn't necessarily mean that Darrell Williams is out of the mix either. So those guys are all scary. Sammy Watkins was trending to play. He hasn't played since week 5, was trending to play, had a setback. He's out. We mentioned McCole Hardman is back from the COVID list. He has seen 68% of the snaps each of the last 2 weeks, which is up 20% from his baseline. I really like him. And I'm fine with Byron Pringle.
Your man.
It's not a showdown slate with Byron Pringle. Guess what? He's essentially free on DraftKings. That $200 cost averages down the rest of the Kansas City Chiefs, which makes it possible to get 2, if not 3 of their big guns in your lineup. That's getting me to Byron Pringle. Talk to us about Hill, Demarcus Robinson, Hardman. Pringle is just a price play at this. If he gets 2 targets in addition to whatever kick returns, I'll be happy. That's it. Doesn't even have to catch them, but there's a chance. He's been on the field of more than just as a kick returner. So,
yeah, the 2 targets would be like a mental win. You would be like, I know he didn't catch them, but the process was on the right plate. So it'd be more of a spiritual success than an actual success. But I do think I don't know if it's a ceiling. It's somewhere in the range. Like his median projection is probably a target and a half to 2 targets. And I don't know, he can go on getting 3 or 4. I think the interesting thing is that he hasn't been that far off of Mecole Hardman in terms of routes run. Like it's been Demarcus Robinson operating as the primary number 2 receiver. I always think of it as the number 3 receiver, but I guess technically it's number 2, Travis Kelce. Technically not a receiver, but the pass catcher, like he's been the number 3 pass catcher, the number 2 receiver. Then you look down and Mecole Hardman getting like significantly fewer routes run. He gets targeted at a higher rate on his routes, which like shouldn't be surprising. He'd be a guy that I would think they would want to get specifically like scheme plays for, sort of in like a mini Tyreek Hill, just scheme up ways to get him the ball because he's super fast. But if you're just looking at sort of the raw volume, it's been basically the same volume between Robinson and Hardman. And I think Hardman always comes in as the more popular showdown play. People just love this guy because he's got like higher draft capital. He's like fast and explosive. And I get all of these things, but if the volume says that they're essentially no different, even though I think Demarcus Robinson's a little bit more expensive, and I get that, I don't think that like $1,000 or whatever dollars is going to be the make or break difference between the slate. But if one of them probably catches the touchdown, the other one doesn't, is the way that one of them wins, that will be the backbreaker. So I'm always just going to lean to like when I think McCole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson are going to get used at basically the same rate, give or take, like a few more snaps for Robinson, but Hardman has kind of schemed the ball more a little bit. When they're going to be used at the same rate, I'm just going to take the guy who's lower owned. And it seems like the public always loves to play Mecole Hardman. So unfortunately, that means I don't get to play Mecole Hardman because I love him too. I'd love to see him get the ball more. But they haven't really made an incredible effort while Sammy Watkins has been out to get him the ball. So as long as that holds true tonight, which like all the data leading into tonight says, yeah, it seems like it'd be the case. I'm going to go with Robinson. And Pringle is not a bad salary saver. It's not like you're not drawing dead to get a target. There are some of these like third string tight ends that we come in and they have like decent points per dollar projections. I actually think Pringle has a decent chance, just given the amount of times like he gets on the field and runs around, that he does go out and get a catch or two. It's not a great chance to get those, but that could be all it needs. And if he scores a touchdown, which anytime you're running, I don't know, 10, 15 routes for Patrick Mahomes, you are definitely live to score a touchdown. That'll break the slate. So I don't mind Pringle as a salary saver, and simply based on our ownership, which I can, I'll pull it up here. Let me see. Between just the utility ownership, we have Mecole Hardman at 22.8 and Demarcus Robinson down below 15. That's, it's about it's 8. I believe it's an 8% edge. I take those little edges wherever I can get them. So I'll be going. I like lots of Hill. I think the interesting thing is that basically Hill and Kelsey see very similar target totals. They run similar amounts of routes. Hill just gets a lot of more air yards, so I think he's going to be more volatile. I'm going to embrace that at captain on Showdown slates. I don't have a strong lean. It's simply that I think we're going to see more popularity on Tyreek, or on Travis Kelce, excuse me. So I think there's not a big difference between the two. I think you get a little bit more of that spiky ceiling output with Tyreek Hill, and their the red zone stats have been almost identical. I think it's 13-11 in favor of Kelce. It's just like the exact same volume plus more air yards for Hill. I'm always going to buy into that for Hill, although I don't really have a strong lean, and I have exposure to both at captain. I think my big lean is going to be in large field tournaments, getting away from Mahomes and just hoping that he focuses enough on one player. So I'm out on, fortunately, out on Hardman. I love him, but it's just the volume dictates that I don't really care who to play between him and Robinson, and the public never likes playing Demarcus Robinson. Pringle, just a salary saver. I'm not super confident in really playing a ton of him in tournaments. And I think maybe he even ends up going a bit too popular because he allows you to do other things. He's sort of the optimizer player, right? The computer sees that and the math spits out that he is the best points per dollar play. He could also go out and get you 0. So I wouldn't be going too crazy on him. And yeah, the Booker thing is really interesting. So Booker in the past 2 weeks, I know 2 weeks ago, I know this isn't even like, I know we led off this conversation with that. Devontae Booker on the other side of the ball, not what we're talking about at all, is really weird because last week was, I believe, a revenge game for him technically against the Broncos. And he got in almost like, I think half of his carries came in the fourth quarter. The week before that, he actually served as more of a backup because I believe it was a knee and actual sickness that came for Josh Jacobs. So I'm not sure what role we see from him. If they are not blowing out their opponent, does he get on the field very much? I'm not sure. He could be the pass catching back, and that could be how he gets on the field. So I think there's like, that will be the struggle. Do you go with like a probably Mecole Hardman, Devontae Booker, or all the way down to Pringle? I think those are going to be the cheap punt plays people gravitate towards.
All right. Reminder, sponsor tonight is No House Advantage. What is that? Well, it is a prop fantasy sports site. Let's talk about how it works. I'm going to drop the link into Slack here. We have free projections for their site. So what they do is they put out a bunch of questions for a particular set of games, a slate, if you will. Tonight they do have single game action. We have the projections for each of their questions here. You choose 5 of their questions. You rate them with confidence points, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then from there, the success on the 5 questions you choose gets points. Those points go against whomever else is in the contest against you. You're playing against other gamers. This is not playing against the house. Therefore, there is no house advantage. Sign up with the promo code Awesemo, and you will get $20 matched with your first deposit. Refer a friend, get another 5. So looking at the projections here for, and I've got too many tabs open. Let's get back over to the no house advantage tabs. We have, let's pick a good one here. Travis Kelce is 85.5 yards. We are projecting him for 86. Feels like there's a lot of ways that could go poorly. Would you go over or under on that one?
Yeah, I guess I would go with the under. Maybe it's just kind of, I would correlate that with the builds I'm going with, which is a little bit more Tyreek Hill focused. And I think it's interesting what they've done. Like the Jets game was kind of the weird one where everyone said, well, what if they get up too much and the touchdowns are spread out and they don't get like a collective, like cohesive, massive touchdown if you get one to Hardman and you get one to, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then they just run the ball. The thing is, they didn't stop passing really, which was the weird thing. People said, like, where's the risk that you go up too much, you run the ball and the game sucks? They, for some reason, them and like Pittsburgh have done this where they get up and they just keep passing. And even when they have like a neutral to positive game script, they don't care. And like, I'm not complaining because that is, I believe, the optimal way to play. If passing is so efficient, why wouldn't you do it? Even if you're up, 21-0 or 21-10. it's just interesting. So I guess I'll still go with the under. I'll tag team with you on the under here. Don't have a strong lead on this one. Our projections say the same thing, so I'm not any strong opinions. I guess I'll take the under.
Yeah, everything's really tight this evening with the projections. Here's an interesting one. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, half a touchdown. We have the under at 0.36 of a touchdown, which gives us a 32% advantage on that for the math. Now, we break out all of this for you on the free projections. Again, I just dropped that link in there, but you go over there, you look at that percentage difference column, and that gives you the relative weighted success or failure of meeting the line. And if that gets a little confusing, the far right-hand column just says pick the under or pick the over. But that's how you can tell which ones are better. Tonight, everything's really aligned nicely. So there's the Edwards-Helaire. I would take the under on one touchdown. And then the Henry Ruggs receptions is 3.5. We're projecting him for 2.2. You want to root the under. There's a lot of Raiders receivers. They're all healthy, and they don't throw the ball a ton. So there we go. All right, let's loop back here. We'll let's give some props here to Travis Kelce. Leads the Chiefs with 80 targets, which is 10th in the league. He also has the 7th best per game total at 85.4 yards per game. He has 6 touchdowns. That already surpasses last year's total. And then his backup, Nick Keiser, has 4 targets in the last 3 games. So Kelce, I have him as my number 2 overall play. He is one guy that you have talked about more than once that he has been able to, he and Kittle are the only 2 tight ends that can really work out as a captain, because they're essentially the pass catcher one for their teams. And both of them are top 10 when healthy, top 10 overall in the NFL when you compare them with receivers.
Yeah, I think it is 4% in the past year and a half. 4% of winning lineups have featured a tight end and the captain, but that doesn't really matter. Like, there is 1 out of 32 teams that has a Kelce, and like 1 out of 16 that has an elite tight end, adding in George Kittle. And actually, George Kittle is the only one to have done it in the regular season the past years. I believe Kelce's came in a postseason showdown slate. But it shouldn't be surprising. Like, there are not a lot of tight ends that play a wide receiver style of role. And tonight we have 2 of them. We don't even have 1. We have 2. And Darren Waller nearly made the optimal captain, I believe, when they faced off. It might have been against the Saints. And Alvin Kamara just happened to do Alvin Kamara thing. So we're looking at 2 teams that kind of buck the trend of tight ends not being good captain plays. And I think it's not even that tight ends aren't good captain plays. It's players that don't get the ball a lot aren't good captain plays. And that is usually tight ends, at least relative to almost any team, giving more targets to a receiver, or more of, like, when you weight it for the fantasy points that you would expect from them, more carries plus targets to a running back. That just doesn't happen often. This isn't often. This has 2 of, I would say, for sure, 2 of the 3 best pass catching tight ends in the league. I'm not afraid of bucking that trend and going to either of them. Kelce is a great play. He gets a ton of targets, catches a lot of touchdowns. I think really my strategy is kind of fading Patrick Mahomes here and hoping that, like, he concentrates on one guy. So although I've talked about playing a little more Hill than Kelce, I'm still playing more Hill and Kelce than I am Mahomes relative to the field, specifically at captain, just because I think we always see, not always, there's oftentimes the case that we see so much ownership gravitate to the easy plays. And this is in large field tournaments. I don't want to, like, say, you're playing 100-man, you can't play Mahomes at captain. You certainly can. And on FanDuel, the conversation is even more skewed because quarterbacks are even more broken in that way on, if you want to call it that, broken on FanDuel's MVP style scoring. So on DraftKings, though, I think Hill, Kelce, both great plays. And even on the other side, I think Darren Waller is really interesting as like a 2-4 captain, in the sense of, obviously the Chiefs are projected to score more points by a pretty significant amount right now. I think it's for the lines at 7.5. So over a touchdown is projected to be given to this team. I want to put more of my eggs in their basket, but does that mean we can't see a 15-target game for Darren Waller and he be the one guy who just gets enough volume to push himself to the optimal captain spot, especially at a reduced price? He can allow you to fit multiple of these Kansas City studs. So I think basically the pass-catching skill position players is where I'm focusing in on captain. And as I've talked about playing a little Hill over Kelce, I don't want to get it twisted. I will still be playing a decent amount of Kelce in my lineups. It's simply that quarterback is probably where I come in as a faded captain.
All right. Dallas did end up beating Minnesota. We have overtime here with Green Bay and the Colts. I screwed up my crunches this morning, had some issues, had to abort some of them. I ended up with 1% of Adam Thielen and 1% of Jefferson. That did not work out well. That cost me late there at the end. Darn it. It was turning into such a good day. But we are a forward-looking show. Speaking of forward-looking shows, I am going to drop, what do you say? Let's put in 20 head-to-heads here for the Showdown slate. Put them in on DK. Username EMac, because I've been playing on there so darn long, I don't have to put any numbers behind my name. Check that out. I will put those in right now. We're going to the NFL tab. We are creating Showdown. We are posting public head-to-heads. Hopefully Seth Hader is in there watching. Let's do 20. Oh, let's use crowns because we've got a bunch of those sitting around. And it's like I'm playing for free. Just rip off 11,000 crowns. Put in my lineup. I have all my lineups done with the exception of Showdown, but I do have my main lineup created. So there you guys go. That's out there. I'm going to upload my tiers and my forward-looking contest for the Sunday night through Monday night. And then we have Monday night through the first game of Thursday, Thanksgiving. We have all sorts of Thanksgiving content planned for you guys, including live before lock for that Thursday night game. That is 8:30, I believe, is the kickoff. So that should be a nice one for everybody. I believe it will be myself and Kyle, but we're going to be breaking that one down for you. Of course, we're going to do live before lock, the regular show. And I think even Adam is doing one of his strategy shows as well. So we've got all sorts of content for you. And then, hey, we're starting everything over tomorrow anyway with the NFL Showdown show with Matt Gajeski along with Dave Loughran. And then you're going to get Dave Laffey and Dave is Laffey. You're going to get Laffey, Josh, and Adam, and they will be doing their lineup review show. And we're kicking the week off again. It's a holiday week, 2.5 days of work if you play your cards right.
Yeah, 2.5 days for work. We're working overtime. You kidding me?
I got a day job. This is like my fun. This is fun. It's doing another job, but
I like my job, but
yes.
I'm not doing 2.5 days of work. I'm doing more work, and I'm doing it for you in the chat. I hope you're listening. Anytime you see me not on a normal schedule, I've done this for you.
All right. Derek Carr has thrown only 2 interceptions this season. The Raiders have lost 7 fumbles. The Kansas City Chiefs defense not giving us much of a price break. I'm not overly excited, but they do have the talent for a pick six or a scoop and score. We'll just have to see what happens on that one, but not a huge vote of confidence. I'm also not going to give a huge vote of confidence here for Mr. Carr. 16 touchdowns on the season, just 2 interceptions. He's Mr. Efficiency. 7.61 yards per attempt is a career high. His 118 rushing yards, also a career high, as is his 69.3% completion percentage. Well, technically that's his second best, but it's almost right up there with his best. Here's the tough part. The Raiders are passing on 51% of their plays. This is the 5th lowest rate in the league. There's only 2 starting quarterbacks. Granted, one is Pat Mahomes, and Mrs. Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes. I believe this is our other one here. Is he worth half of a Mahomes? 2/3 of a Mahomes?
We can do the math. It's whatever 18 divided by 28 is in our projections, but I can't do that mental math. You kidding me? What's that? That's 2/3. That's almost. I don't know. It's something like 2/3, I think. So I don't know. I think Carr's fine, especially given his price. That's the thing that is attractive about him. And the fact that I do think the reason they are passing so infrequently, like Carr hasn't topped 200 yards. 200 is a tiny number for an NFL quarterback. And he's topped out at 160 over the past 3 weeks. Those are all wins, and they've been a decent amount of decisive wins. Like I know their game versus Denver was just a bloodbath. They killed Drew Lock. It was ugly. They got to run a lot. As long as Vegas is even close to right on what this game is supposed to be, we should see more pass attempts from Derek Carr. And like you said, he's been fairly efficient. He's completing a decent amount of his passes. He's like top 10 in QBR and quarterback rating, which are somehow different or something. Like adjusted yards per attempt, he grades out quite well in as well. He has been efficient when passing because he's like the ideal game manager. He's sort of, I'm not saying he's like Drew Brees, but their style of play and their efficiency are not dissimilar. I think Drew Brees obviously does it better. But when we think about, Derek Carr, we don't think of a great quarterback, but his efficiency numbers are good, and his volume could be cranked up to close to a season high as his team actually has to play from behind. They've won like three in a row, I think. So I'm not too concerned with the passing volume, especially if I play my lineups right. I think you have to tell yourself a story is how we often phrase it. It's more of just understanding correlation, what has to happen for Derek Carr to throw a lot. I think Derek Carr and Josh Jacobs would be quite negatively correlated. I don't know. I won't say you cannot play them in the same lineup, but given that Josh Jacobs goes crazy when his team has a lead and they don't have to use Derek Carr, we see 20 plus carry games from Josh Jacobs. Derek Carr passes 20 times for 150 yards. They seem like they'd be negatively correlated. So I think for me, when I'm playing Derek Carr, it's more about quarterbacks score a lot of points generally. And if his team is going to be an underdog, I think it's fair to project that he should have a decent outing. He's cheap. And I think he works well within the context of what I think is going to happen in this game. So I don't love him, but quarterback score points. He's not that expensive. And I don't have any reason to believe that the Raiders come out and win this ball game. Vegas doesn't really seem to think that either, at least in terms of the spread. Obviously, anything can happen. Spreads have been wild this year, but just look at I think Packers might have come out and pulled out this win, but that game crazy going into overtime. So I don't want to rely too heavily on the spread, but I will say it seems very inexpensive for a starting quarterback in the NFL on a showdown slate to get him that cheap. So what is he, 9,800, I believe? Not a lot. So I like Derek Carr. I'm not playing him at captain. I just struggle to see the ceiling, especially when I'm not sure if that ceiling, how it gets there without, Darren Waller just surpassing him. So I kind of like Carr, though. I like Carr. I think he throws a lot when his team is down, or enough when his team is down at his price. I'm not going crazy on him. I'm not playing him in captain, not lock buttoning him in 150 or anything, but I like him.
All right. It's not official. It's still going on, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it went into overtime, right?
Oh, yes, it is in overtime. Okay, so, I keep losing more of my currently winning. So let's just close that tab. Nothing good can come from me looking at that tab. All right, cruising on down here. You're kind of hitting on the Jacobs Booker. Not a ton to say. 21, 14, 31 in his three most recent games with 200-yard performances and 3 touchdowns for Jacobs. As you mentioned, Booker kind of was getting closeout run, but both of them went off in last week's game, and there was plenty of work to go around. However, it has been a little bit interesting to see Booker potentially coming into the mix a little bit more. Rashard being out is helpful because, as you pointed out a couple segments ago, it lines up for him to be, if not the pass catching back, at least the change of pace back. And that all of a sudden, it makes it quite interesting. He's only 2,200 on DK. So that makes it quite interesting. Receivers a little tougher. So Tyrone Williams still on the injured reserve, or did he opt out? I forget. But he
got placed on the injured reserve before the you can return window, whatever that is technically called. It was early enough in the off season that you can't return from it. So
all right. So here's our the last 3 weeks worth of targets. 3 weeks. Renfro 9, Agler 9, Ruggs 11. Edwards and Zay Jones each have 1 target in that 3-game stretch, both of which came last week. Yikes. Now, a lot of that is because Darren Waller leads the team in targets, receptions, and yards, and is just 1 touchdown behind Nelson Agler. I said Nelson Agler is the perfect troll touchdown scorer. Someone who has 5 on the season is not doing much else. I don't know which one of these pass catchers we like. I think a lot of people are going to be going to Waller. I think that's fine, but is there a favorite here? We haven't seen enough volume for that to really play out. This is sort of, I believe you've used the phrase before, throw things against the wall and see what sticks. I am going to build 100 lineups here shortly, so that's kind of what I'm going to do with this pass catching core. I'm not overly excited by anyone, and it's just tough to point anybody out in particular. If I had to choose just one, it would be Hunter Renfro, and I'm just hoping that he gets peppered with targets and it's full PPR on DK, which is where I'm playing tonight. I think he's a complete afterthought on FanDuel, though, because his touchdown equity is almost nil.
Yeah, I agree. I like Hunter. Like is a relative term. Hunter Renfro is fine. He projects as a pretty solid value right now. Looking at our raw projections, and let me see if I can find him here. Hunter Renfro. Oh man, I'm really struggling to find him. I don't see any of these. Oh, okay, here he is. Yeah, he's actually at 4,200. He's like a 2.1 value. It's just like points per dollar, I assume. And we get down to like Nelson Agler is quite a difficult pill to swallow at 6,200. The only reason I think you go to Nelson Agler is simply because that price means that so no one else wants to play him. I think Hunter Renfrow probably lies in that perfect middle where he is both a good value, but I think people will also choose to play Henry Ruggs for the same reason they play McCole Hardman. It's like, oh, Henry Ruggs go vroom, I play him in Showdown. But like, I'm looking at the volume, and there's not a huge difference between his volume and Hunter Renfrow's volume. Renfrow plays like a decent amount less snaps, but he just gets targeted at a higher rate. He probably just comes in when they're throwing the ball. So I think Renfrow is a good enough value. Is going to be low enough owned that I think he's decent leverage off of like a Henry Ruggs. I don't think anyone's really going to be playing Nelson Agler. Maybe that's the reason you go to him. And because, I don't know, maybe he has some ability to catch touchdowns at an above average rate, maybe that allows him to kind of cleanly pay off. Like his range of outcomes has a spiky upside where he can pay off his, well overpriced price tag. But I would say Hunter Renfrow is my favorite. And like you said, because I think he gets there primarily, he can score touchdowns for sure. He had a really sick catch against the Patriots, I think, like downfield catch. But because I do believe that most of his value comes on getting like 8 targets, catching 7 of them, like these low ADOT, high percentage targets, doesn't really help me too much on FanDuel. So maybe in that scenario, I actually am looking at someone like Henry Ruggs, or I guess even Nelson Agler as well, whereas I think their downfield roles give them more of a potential to catch a touchdown. And that's really what matters from your receivers, especially when we're talking about guys who I think the volume in terms of raw targets isn't that much different. I think, like you said, their numbers are all both low and similar over the past 3 weeks. So for that reason, I'm probably skewing a little bit more towards who I believe can score the touchdowns. Maybe on FanDuel, the weird thing to do is to play Nelson Agler again, just because I don't think people want to click on his name. They see him as like you said, this random poaching touchdown guy, but he's like a core part of their passing game behind Darren Waller, who's obviously their number one. So I think maybe that's where I go on FanDuel, just because I think it'll get me unique. And having obviously like less roster spots, it's even more difficult to get unique. So on FanDuel, maybe Nelson Agler. On DraftKings, though, I definitely agree. Hunter Renfrow is my favorite of the 3 by kind of a considerable margin.
All right, loading up my primetime slate guys here. We've hit our reads, we've hit our marks. Reminder again, Mayflower is the promotion, $1 for the Awesemo NFL Weekly Express package. That gets you all Showdown content. Definitely want to check that out. That's going to be good through Thanksgiving. Mayflower. Hey, Pilgrims came over on a boat called Mayflower before they crashed into Plymouth Rock, something like that. I forget how that all worked out. Yeah. Schoolhouse Rock did not teach me everything. Just taught me a few things. So that's what we got there. We have, damn it, Packers lost.
I saw that. I was just looking at it.
That's going to be a fun one. On that, but let's see here. What do we want to do? We have 22 minutes. I'm going to do my uploads here. I have not yet built my rules, but I'll do that quickly in Fantasy Cruncher here. But the usual ones are going to be in play for me. Tonight's the kind of night where I'm not really that. I'm not as worried about limiting things because the Kansas City Chiefs price of their players is going to do all of the limiting for me. Yeah. And I'm going to, let me say this in a better way. I'm going to be playing things more on my player percentages and throughout my overarching portfolio. The main reason I'm going to do that is because of how I'm going to be going so heavy and influencing the Chiefs, and they are so expensive. That will sort of automatically diffuse what I'm doing with my Raiders. I'm not going to get multiple. In worst case, I get 2 of their pass catchers in one lineup. It's not the end of the world because their guys are relatively cheap, and maybe I luck into the one of them that gets a touchdown. So tonight was a little different in that I was not too fired up about forcing the rules. And in the ones I do want, I'll just say, hey, I'm going to do 10 lineups with Kelsey and the captain. I'm going to put Mahomes in those lineups. I'm going to do 10 with Hill. I'm going to put Mahomes in those lineups. So I don't have to build all these intricate rules tonight, which is something that a first, I should say, for me in many, many, many weeks. So that's kind of a different approach. And a lot of people always say, hey, what are you doing for your rules? Tonight, really not any, just the way things are pricing out. Is there anything that stands out to you? like I wouldn't lose sleep if Bell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire end up in my same lineup. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe I'll set a quick rule for that. But I've got Bell projected and influence so low, I'm only going to have like 5 or 10%. So how many of those lineups are going to end up with the Clyde Edwards-Helaire lineup? So it's very interesting today how this is all sort of shaping out.
Yeah, because Bell is so cheap, he could actually end up like that's actually kind of an interesting. So I guess I'll throw this back to you. I actually think like Clyde Edwards-Helaire in captain in large field tournaments is very interesting. Like he's still running as the number one back. He's running as the number one back on a team that doesn't run the ball very much, and it's only a modest lean as the number one. But like you said, he does have like a handful of touchdowns in recent weeks. He does get a lot of targets too, and although those targets are like their yardage for Patrick Mahomes, of like a catch for 8 yards is not the same points for Patrick Mahomes that it is for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It is a vast discrepancy between those. So if he goes out and gets 6 catches for 30 yards, that's a massive swing in how much it gives, what it gives Patrick Mahomes 1 point and some change, some sort of math that I could never possibly do in my head. Whereas it gives him whatever I riffed. It was 9 points, I think. That's a big difference. So I think the way he accrues points is not nearly as correlated to his quarterback as it is, a Tyreek Hill to his quarterback. So I think him and captain would be very, very unique in its own right. I think him and captain plus Bell would be like not a great points lineup, but it's probably going to come close to being very unique. And it's not drawing dead to happen specifically because we know he can score touchdowns. We know he can catch passes. And Bell is just so cheap that a handful of receptions, a long run from him, or if they score twice on the ground and split them, all of those are scenarios that are certainly in the range of outcomes. And, they would be awfully unique. It's only for large field tournaments, but I do think double running back, like if we've had a handful of slates where double running back actually hits, I always think of the Latavius Murray slates. He always seems to be involved in the double running back ones. Do I think this team operates like that? Not necessarily, but do I think it's possible that on one slate, anything can happen and that's going to be well under-owned? I think so. So in large field tournaments, if you're building like 20 lineups or if you're building 152, I would say Clyde Edwards-Helaire in captain is quite unique. And you can still, like you said, you can play him with Bell. I wouldn't go crazy with Bell just because he doesn't see a ton of work and it's not a ton of targets, but you could still play him with Bell. I actually wouldn't rule it out. I'd let it happen if it's going to happen.
All right. Now, so I'm curious. I did my main lineup when I wrote this article last night. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to change it. I'm rolling with Byron Pringle, but it's funny. He's not really coming up in my crunches. So I am putting him in my main lineup. If you guys grabbed one of mine, you'll probably be able to reverse engineer it. But go for it, because there's ways to you need to leave money on the table the way I built it. So yeah. I have no issues with that because so when you're looking at like that, like I'm depending on what I make for my final selection here, I'm going to be leaving somewhere between $900 and $1,800 on the table. That's just a function of basically picking Pringle for what I'm doing here. I could probably maneuver that around just a little bit and get Le'Veon Bell if I wanted to, but I don't really know because he's just $1,400. But does that really do a whole heck of a lot for me as opposed to Pringle? So maybe not. Then all of a sudden I'm building an entire Chiefs onslaught, and that's not what I wanted to do with this. So then the question becomes, do I keep Mahomes up in the top, or do I put somebody like Kelsey in? So like if you were doing a head-to-head, a 3-man type lineup, would you go for Mahomes, who's 20,100, massive portion of our cap, or do you take that for $4,200 discount with Kelsey, put Mahomes in the flex, and then now you've got a little more wiggle room?
I think I'd still be looking to Mahomes' cap, and I still think there's just enough variance in anyone. Travis Kelsey is really good, probably for sure the least variant tight end in the league right now, especially with George Kittle being, on IR, I assume, not coming back for at least the regular season. No tight end gives you a higher floor. It's still not a quarterback floor. I still think like there's games like I think it was versus Denver where like they got up and they just had like a random tight end catch a touchdown and it didn't happen for him. And I think anyone who's getting 8, 9, 10 targets, if 2 of them are airballed, they drop one of them and the rest are the short ones that they catch, their floor is just so much greater or so much lower, than someone like Patrick Mahomes. So I'm fine just eating that massive chunk of salary, playing Mahomes at captain and figuring out the rest of my lineup in like a cash lineup.
Yeah, and then because it's kind of interesting. So then I bounce around and I say, well, you know what? I'll go with Robinson. I really don't want Pringle. But because otherwise I'm looking at Ruggs, but I don't, now I'm doing a 5-1 in cash. That's a mess, right? So you're like, okay, if I take 4 Chiefs, even though I'm not thrilled with Ruggs, I kind of want him as another option because there's only one ball on offense, right? So it makes it really hard. So this is as you're sitting there just quickly playing through stuff. And now I'm sort of shuffling the deck for those of you that picked up my head-to-head. So because I decided I was giving in too much there with what I was really going to be doing. But Hardman doesn't seem that appealing in head-to-heads. Robinson really seems like the guy, but I'm going to go with Pringle just because I can. Where do you rank Carr in head-to-heads? Is he a flex option? Well, let me rephrase that. Sorry, no head-to-heads. Carr is he a flex or is he worth going at captain? And at what number lineup are you on before you get captain?
What number lineup would I be before I get to Carr captain? Man, that's difficult. It'd be pretty down, although it wouldn't be non-existent. I think, man, it's really interesting to see like what are the odds of him being the top scoring player versus what the field is going to do, and how does like Patrick Mahomes, like in a game where Derek Carr scores a lot, it's probably it's a back and forth shootout. And in that scenario, I'm very concerned that if I played Carr captain, like sure, I locked in, a 20-point game plus the 1.5x multiplier, but did Patrick Mahomes go out and put up 30 before the multiplier, 35 plus? I do think the scenario where Carr hits it's probably difficult to imagine that Patrick Mahomes doesn't have a good game. It simply does the savings with Carr allow you to play like Mahomes and Kelsey and one other premium player like a Waller, I don't know, whatever, Nelson Agler in the flex. Yeah, so it would take a while. I would say he still probably ranks below all 3 of the top pass catchers on the 2 combined teams. I'd still put him behind Mahomes, even though I said I'm fading Mahomes. I don't have a ton of Carr captain either. I do like him in the flex. It's just his ceiling feels difficult to find and would potentially be very tethered to a Darren Waller ceiling, which Darren Waller probably just outscore him in that case. So I'd even maybe put Clyde Edwards-Helaire ahead of him. I guess that puts him at like 6 or so. Maybe you could put like a Demarcus Robinson ahead of him. So he's like 7 or 8. I think it's fine to have that many captains being played if you're building 150 lineups. It really just depends on what the rest of your like strategy is to build unique lineups and find leverage. Not super high on him. On FanDuel, it becomes a little bit more of an interesting conversation because the scoring is skewed a little bit more towards quarterbacks. I would probably put him, at least more comfortably up in that top 5 range. I think you could definitely I wouldn't be arguing him over a Demarcus Robinson or anything, or I wouldn't be arguing Robinson over him. Wouldn't be arguing any of his pass catchers outside of maybe Waller. I think it'd be even interesting to play him at captain, Waller, and then go with the rest of the Chiefs on FanDuel, like whatever mix of Chiefs you want to play.
All right. So here's what. So I'm gonna go through, and I'm not. I've decided no rules, but I'm gonna do heavy influence on my ownership. So I'm gonna say no more than 10% of either defense. I'm going to say, and we've got them less than 10. We've got both kickers coming in at 20%, or at least they did on our last update. I'm going to go 30 on that one. I'm okay with being a little bit higher. I'm also not going to worry about setting my rule of less than or no more than 2 of the kickers in defense, because I've already said mathematically it's not going to be hardly any lineups with product times, or what is it? Not product, 30% times 30% times 10% times 10%. We're looking maybe one lineup can end up with all 4 of them. So it's not going to happen. And once I set randomness and unique, it's not going to work. We're looking at 40% Kelsey. I'm going to go up to 70% on the field. Waller, I'm okay with a little bit of a fade. We got him at 35. I'm going to go 30. Jason Witten, those guys are all afterthoughts. I don't think I'm going to get them. What has Witten even done? So is this a Witten revenge game against the announcers? Is that how that works? He was Monday Night Football though, right? Monday Night. Yeah, okay. So not quite. Tyreek Hill, I won a ton, so I'm going to set him at 70. Mecole Hardman, we got it at 25. I thought it'd be higher than that. I'm going to go 40. Renfro, all my other pass catchers, I'm going to put at 25 just to get a mix in there. And Byron Pringle, I'm going to put at 35. I don't think he's going to make my main lineup, but he's going to be a heavy, I'm going to put him at 40%. He's going to be in most of my others. So I'm kind of walking back the main lineup. Josh Jacobs, we've got it 30%. I'm not overly excited with him. I'll go 40. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'll set it at 40. We have it at 28, but I'm not that. I don't think I'll get there. Booker, I want a lot of. We have it 14. I'm going to set it 35 because he's one of my cheap guys. Le'Veon Bell is where I'm dancing back and forth between him and Pringle. Le'Veon Bell's at least going to get a couple touches. We don't know about Pringle. Depending on how much if you have enough for Bell and you're choosing between Bell and Pringle, I would take Bell in that one. And depending on how everything shakes out for you, that's going to be potentially a question. And then I'm just going to run everybody at 5% captain for starters. How do you feel about 4 2s, 2 4s, 5 1s, 1 5s tonight? People do like hearing your takes on those.
Yeah, so I think what will probably be, like, I just pulled up Cruncher and just built the 3 highest projected lineups you can build, and they're all Chiefs onslaughts. I'm not saying like just because highest projected that you should be like playing that in your cash lineups. I think there's like, just because the highest projected doesn't mean it has like the best floor. I think there are scenarios where like, yeah, this isn't the perfect lineup. You stake a lot on the Chiefs. You should be staking more of your lineup on the Chiefs, both in salary and just roster allocation in like cash on the Chiefs. But should you be staking all of them? I'm not sure. I still think like Derek Carr might end up would make the cash game lineup. I think you're trying to get both quarterbacks no matter what. In terms of just the overall roster construction in tournaments, though, which I think is what most people are looking for, is I think maybe the most interesting leverage play is getting your Raiders in captain. For me, it is mostly Darren Waller. I think you could potentially do some weird stuff like an Agler or a Jacobs even. I do think I just want to be over the field on Waller in captain, if only because I still think, one, he saves me some salary relative to all the Chiefs at captain, at least your trio of expensive Chiefs. He lets me play some of those guys, and his volume could insulate him from obviously his team scoring fewer points, even running fewer plays and just having overall less yardage. He is he's probably more of the engine of his offense, at least in terms of like market share of yardage, than especially the passing game, than either Hill or Kelsey are, because they compete with each other. He has no one like that to compete with. So in terms of, I think that would be probably the kind of high leverage way to build. So you still get all of your Chiefs in. You just say that, well, hey, the Raiders were playing from behind from almost the kickoff. The first Chiefs drive was a score, and after that it was throw from Derek Carr. So potentially like a Carr Waller 2-4 build. Maybe you don't even need Carr there, especially if he controls all of, like, if Waller controls all of the passing, or in his case the receiving production, you could just run him with another one like a Devontae Booker just to save some salary. Not too interested in 1-5. I know it hit once this year with like James Robinson at captain. It doesn't hit at a particularly high rate. My lean is that it doesn't hit at a rate commensurate with it actually like being worth the payoff. So I think 2-4 with specifically with the Raiders is really interesting. I think this will be a slate where 5-1 is quite popular, like I said, with the Chiefs, especially if you're just running an optimizer. Like I said, I built the lineups and I saw lots of Chiefs. So I would normally I think it's fine. I think people kind of shy away from that. They think, well, the teams are both going to score. When people see the Chiefs, I don't think they'll go to that. And the optimizer says that they won't either, at least if you're just like kind of being lazy and just like, well, I'm just going to enter 20 lineups with the optimizer. I'm going to enter 150 or whatever. So I actually kind of shy away from that on maybe for the first time in a long time, because I think this will be one of the most popular 5-1 slates. I'm more looking at how do I build unique, mostly Raiders in my lineup, because I think it's hard to get unique with your Chiefs. Like, everyone knows who the good Chiefs are. There's a little bit more ambiguity when you're looking at the Raiders pass catchers beyond Darren Waller, and there's just going to be lower ownership. Like, we know ownership correlates to the team that is projected to win the game. That couldn't be more true this game with the Chiefs being big favorites and being the Chiefs. I think there's just some name brand value in your Mahomes, Hills, and Kelseys that are going to be, even including the fact that they're big favorites, more so. I think they'll be popular. So not even that I'm trying to get away from them. It's just potentially how do I either jam more Raiders into my lineups, whether it's playing just like one of them at captain, that's not getting more of them in, but it's allocating more of like the priority position. So either getting them at captain or going 3-3s or even 4-2s, especially if you just get like Patrick Mahomes really lasers in on one of his receivers, whether it be Hill, Kelsey, probably be the two guys. I guess it could be Robinson, but I'd mostly focus on those two. My strategy tonight, I guess, revolves around the Raiders. It's mostly getting different with them. 4-2s and 2-4s of Raiders are going to be kind of my strategy. Hopefully they keep it close. They won last game, so who knows? Maybe they win this one.
Carlson or Butker in cash?
Our projection likes Butker a lot. They don't kick a ton of field goals. I think the Raiders kick significantly more field goals, but I'm not going to go too heavily against our projections, especially I think since they're close. So I'll go Butker.
All right. Reminder, I'm going to drop the projections in. We're doing for free the No House Advantage projections. They are the sponsor of the show. Looks like there's a little bit of overlay over there. If you have not yet made a lineup or an account there, use the promo code Awesemo when you make your first deposit. They'll match up to $20 in site currency. That's promo code Awesemo over there at No House Advantage. It is the prop wager fantasy site. You're not playing against the house, so there's no house advantage. You're playing against other gamers. I'm going to upload my lineups here, and then we'll make one more. Why? Oh, interesting. Well, Hunter Renfrow it is in my main lineup. What do you know? What else? It's only money, right? That's what we say. Well, last Sunday I ended up running the full train of lineups. I've got 10 more head-to-head sitting out there, guys, in DK that no one's claimed. So you guys, I'm just saying, might be a fun way to make a little extra cash there. But 10 lineups, username EMac. Enjoy. Go get those. Knock it out. I won 17 of my 20 games, and I cashed everything except boosters. And was winning triple ups and quints with my placeholder lineup last week. On Sunday. Monday, it was a different story. Mistakes were made.
You need to struggle more. It's the pressure of like your CSV not working and like OBS not working. That pressure forges you into a diamond of lineups.
Yeah. Fortunately, that was made previously, but there we go. All right, let's download the right slate. We'll get that up. We got 4 minutes to go here. Again, starting off tomorrow morning, we're going to have the not live before lock, but we're going to have the Showdown preview show with Laffy and Matt Gajewski. And then after that, you're going to get Laffy once again with Adam and Josh. They're going to do the lineup review show, and then we're off to the races. It's kind of a short/long week because Thanksgiving. Best 3-game slate of the year. That's happening on Thursday. We're going to have so many shows and articles for you guys. You're going to be so happy. You're going to be thankful. But one way you can be thankful to us is, or show your thanks, is to subscribe to the Awesemo channel. That helps us with that pesky YouTube algorithm. And we would like to reach 50,000 subscribers by Christmas. We are closing in on 42,000, which is pretty cool. That is all from you guys. Thank you very much for that. We've got 3 minutes to go here. Look, I don't know what to do with myself because my lineups are already uploaded. By the way, I scrambled when I wasn't even on air with my lineups this morning. It's like tradition. It makes you feel alive until it doesn't work. Then it makes you want to feel like you're dead. So there we go. Let's see. I saw Josh was struggling a little bit with his lineups leading into lock today. Happens to him. And it happens to him. All right. What do we got here? 2 minutes to go. Nothing has popped up. So is Pringle in play? Yes. Kelsey or Carr? For me, Kelsey is my number 2 overall play tonight. Thanks, Kyle and EMac. You are welcome. Dashing Doors hopes Mahomes gets some poopy pants and can't play tonight. So there we go. We're going to leave it on that note. I don't know. We'll find out. But we're not quite ready for pizza. But I'm going to have some pizza, Pringles flavored pizza, or Pringles pizza flavored, I guess, tonight, in honor of the Pringle man himself, who was the originator of the might as well go buy a lottery ticket from my overall rankings, and he crushed his rookie season, which was last year, the Showdown slate, like caught 4 for 60 and a touchdown or something and just destroyed the slate. Will he do it again tonight? I don't know. Got him in a bunch of lineups. So we'll find out. Who terrifies you tonight of not having enough?
Chiefs running backs. I think either one, like they project quite ugly. CH seems too expensive. Bell seems like he doesn't get a lot of work, but like touchdown randomness could definitely float either one of their ways.
All right. I'm just going to give how many Pringle. Ooh, I've got some Pringle captain. You get some serious lineups. So Pringle, Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey, Carr, and Hardman. There's a lineup. We'll see what happens. 14% Pringle. So, but I do have 4% in captain. So Good times ahead. That's why he's no longer in my main lineup. I had enough allocated to him in the captain spot. But with that, we are going to get on out of here. It's EMac Ramble again. No, I was just waiting until we got to lock, in case anything broke. But we're going to dip on out of here. You can follow Kyle over on Twitter at Kyle Tweets here. You can follow me at EMac DFS. And of course, it is Awesemo_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.